Welcome back to Formula 1 Espresso News. We're, of course, back from the summer break. We're back in the shed. The drivers are back in the paddock as they arrive in Zandvoort for the resumption of the 2025 season. And we've got the latest from Media Day today, as well as, of course, what happened with that Cadillac announcement and that complete bombshell of Valtteri Bottas and Sergio Perez being named as their driver lineup for 2026. Not if you're listening to the podcast. So, with all that in mind, 30 minutes of Formula 1 news coming your way. Quick favour from me, like, follow, subscribe, whatever is available to you on the platform you're listening to, as we bring you the latest from the paddock to the podcast via the shed. This is Formula 1 Espresso News, and you're listening to Coffee Corner Motorsport Full Beans Podcast. Starting off with the world champion, the home hero, Max Verstappen in Media Day today. Not your usual Max Verstappen, I would say, not a bullish Max Verstappen, a very reflective Max. He sees the title challenges being firmly over. He's just talking about how he's leaning into enjoying the second half of the season, learning the car a lot more, helping to develop the team ready for next season. Now that, of course, he's committed his future to Red Bull for 2026 at least. And it's not your usual bullish Max, like I say. The key line for me, it doesn't make sense for him to be frustrated. We just need to look at the car and move forward. So it's very much a, line in the sand, which is quite poignant because we're in Zandvoort, down by the seaside, but a line in the sand and moving on from Red Bull. He talks about how Hungary was really poor for the team. Zandvoort is probably suited more to the RB21, but it's not an ideal track. And he's just banking on the weather causing chaos and putting them into the frame rather than being able to win anything on a straight-out performance. Max, of course, highly successful since the return of the Dutch Grand Prix. Will be looking to at least get on the podium, if not try and challenge for the win. He sees, basically the weather being the key for him to become a contender for the win on Sunday. But like I say, it was a much calmer Max. It was a much, less fraught Max, quite reflective, quite laid back, quite open and honest about the challenges that Red Bull have been facing, and just talking, like I say, about the future, what they're going to do. Obviously, we know they got Ford coming on board in 2026 alongside Red Bull powertrains. It seems that Red Bull are going through this phase of just restructuring, regrouping after, of course, Silverstone, departure of Christian Horner, then going into summer break, that side of things. Laurent Mecchi is creating this sort of more family team atmosphere. I think it's the best way to describe it. And I suppose for me, it's quite sad to see Max looking that way, quite sad to see him looking quite beaten before the weekend even started. We know that if there's an opportunity, he'll capitalise on it. We know that if there's a chance, if there's a way that Red Bull can get that setup right and get Max in the frame, that he'll deliver. He always does. But he certainly didn't seem to be in any sort of mindset that he's going to be challenging for the win on Sunday. He thinks it's pretty much between the McLarens and that he's just there to pick up the pieces or capitalise on the weather chaos, basically. Then we came on to Oliver Bearman and Gabriel Bortoletto, two rookies, obviously. Bearman, his run of P11 is really frustrating, being just outside the points, but obviously promising for him as a rookie. He talks about it being close, but not close enough, which I kind of get. But I suppose from a rookie performance, he's been consistently hovering around that points mark. Haas have been around that area anyway, so I think there's a real positive to take from that one. Bortoletto has obviously scored points out of 3 out of the last 4 races. He's talked about Austria being the turning point. Sauber moving forward with their development with the team as they obviously transition into Audi. It seems that the team are much more upbeat recently about their development going forward. It seems that Audi have got a real grip on it. Jonathan Wheatley's got a real grip. Binotto's got a real grip on the actual running of a Formula 1 team. And it feels really good for Sauber at the moment. It feels really good for Audi coming in. It feels like we're now at that transition point. Last year, it felt like we were at that phase where, they were just doing nothing. They were just treading water, waiting for Audi to take ownership, waiting for them to take control of it. It really feels like since that move to bring Binotto in and then Jonathan Wheatley, the team have really made strides forwards. They've obviously got their base set up in Bicester for people to be able to recruit in Motorsport Valley to get the best people on board. Audi are obviously probably a bit annoyed about all the hype being on Cadillac at the moment, if I'm being honest. They see themselves as just as a bigger entry in 2026. Won't like the fact that it's all about Cadillac at the moment. Will want to be able to make their own mark on Formula 1. So expect to see in the second half of the season a ramp up from Audi, I think, as we see that changeover between the two into into them joining the grid next year. I think there's some real positives, though. Like I say, I think the team's performance, their upgrade package seems to have worked. The driver partnership is probably, Jonathan Whitley described it this week as one of the best on the grid. He sees literally no friction between the two. They've obviously got that multi-year deal, take them into new regulations. They're very settled. They get on very well. I think it's a good partnership for them. And I think, it's got two rookies in two different mindsets. Oliver Bearman is coming across as a bit frustrated by that P11, whereas Bortoletto is coming across as someone who's very much, found himself in the points, really showing what he can do, delivering on that promise. That is obviously what convinced Sauber to, buy him out of the McLaren deal and get him into that Audi contract, that long-term contract, when everyone obviously expected Carlos Sainz to come in. So I think we've got two rookies at different stages of their season, both obviously very highly rated. We know that Ollie Bearman is being earmarked for a future Ferrari seat with all that backing that he's got. Gabriel Bortoletto, managed by Fernando Alonso, of course, is increasing in stock week by week, really. So I think for me, it's really good to see where those two are. It's good to see the teams. I think not enough is being talked about at Haas. When they started the season, I did an article on the website. Check out if you get a chance, which was about Komatsu, talk about how they started off the season in a really poor point, developed, and Silverstone has been a really big turning point for the team in terms of development, car on track, being able to push it. Ollie Bearman talked about how the car felt right from that Silverstone package and that upgrade onwards. So there are still a lot of positives. We know they've got the Toyota Gazoo Racing partnership. There was talk about the simulator not being ready for 2026, which is a bit of a frustration for Haas. Obviously, they're sharing it now as part of the deal to try and ease them away from Ferrari and Maranello into this new deal with Toyota. And obviously, they're not at that point yet where they can change over, certainly in time for 2026, which means they have to wait for Ferrari to free up all the time in the wind tunnel, free up all the time on the simulator, which I think is a real frustration for Haas. You're working your program around what they're doing, and they're naturally going to get priority. So I can see why that causes a lot of friction for the team in terms of organising things going forward, and also from a development point of view, because you might have something ready to go, but you haven't got the facilities to make sure that you're on the right path. You have to hold things up, you have to hold things back, you have to rush things through to fit a timescale. So it's really difficult when a team's sharing facilities like what Haas are doing. So hopefully that Toyota partnership will start coming to fruition. They then get that through a lot more. And yeah, for me, it's a real positive for them. I think Haas have made some good strides. And like I said, Sauber are definitely on the right track going forward. Then we came on to Lando Norris, Alex Albon, Isaac Hadjar. Obviously, Lando Norris is talking about the championship. He talked about how in Hungary, the one side wasn't luck. It was good planning by the team. It was what they do. It's their championship mindset to do things different, to go after things. Not sure Oscar Piastri would agree with that one, but he talked about how McLaren have got this mindset that they expect to win, and that's not being blasé and being shouting from the rooftop. That's the performance of the car. It's giving them the confidence that actually they're in a position to step into that, and that they can then take that forward at each race weekend. For me, I still feel that this is a battle that's waiting to heat up. I don't think this is heated up so far. I think the track suit different drivers. I think they're very much on an even keel in terms of their ability, as well as obviously the standing between the two. I still think the McLaren are playing the safe game until they wrap up that Constructors' Championship. Baku is the earliest they can wrap it up on. We talked about this on the podcast. For me, I think the sooner we get there, the better for some actual racing in the second half, because I think McLaren will keep playing it safe until that point. Obviously, there was a news on a MasterCard deal. So for those who don't know, it's a 100 million a year deal, puts them on par with the Oracle Red Bull deal. And they were the last team on the grid who didn't have a title sponsor. Obviously, we haven't seen Cadillacs for next year, but we're all assuming they're going to have one. So next season, all of the teams will have one, and they will be McLaren MasterCard Formula One team from 2026 onwards. And looks like there's some good deals from MasterCard as well in terms of fan engagement and what they're planning on bringing, which is really good for that. Going on to obviously the championship, the gap's down to 9 points. It's close. It's whoever comes out, it feels, at each weekend. I feel momentum's back with Lando, but I also feel that if Oscar comes out of the summer break and gets a good couple of results under his belt, then actually Lando's going to feel the pressure again. So I think it will keep swaying for me. My money's still on Oscar to win, if I'm honest, but I can easily see Lando doing it. Then we talked about, obviously, Alex Albon. Williams still making that fight for P5 and has to close it in. Zandvoort is a confidence track. Alex Albon talked in the summer in one of his articles about how it's a different mindset for Williams now. They're not having to take risks to get points. They can actually develop the car, move it forward. And what he meant was the base that the Williams have had this year has been a lot better in terms of being able to take it forward into each race, tweak the setup. Carlos Sainz has clearly moved into a window now where he's operating very closely to Alex Albon in terms of performance. Probably it's fair to say he struggled with that move from Ferrari at the beginning of the season for various reasons. We've seen it with Lewis the other way, whether it be Mercedes engines, whether it be bedding into a new team who's not quite up to the standard of Ferrari, whatever it may have been. We're now seeing Carlos starting to extract performance. We've seen the two drivers go, really close in terms of where they're finishing, where they're qualifying, their pace. And I think this is what Williams wanted, two drivers pushing each other for the best of the team. So I think Williams are in a good position. I think that if you'd asked them before the season, would they have taken it where they are now, they would have bit your hand off. So I think it's really hard for them to not be chasing this season, knowing that they need to develop next season as well. So I think Williams are at a real conundrum. I think that they've been open about switching development off. James Vowell's been open and honest, one of the most open and honest about putting their eggs in the basket for 2026 and what they're doing as a team. So I think for me, it doesn't feel like Williams have got a lot in the locker in terms of performance. It's going to rely on the drivers and some good setup and maybe a bit of luck to keep them in there. Haas, feels are on a ascendancy where their development is pushing them up, whereas Williams, I feel, are quite stagnant in terms of their development. They're just now trying to get what they can out of a car, but ultimately that car is a better base model than what it has been for the previous few years. So it might be enough to see them through. And then you've obviously got about, Isaac Hadjar, a lot of talk about Isaac being promoted up. He talked about how he doesn't particularly want that Red Bull seat. I'm sure Helmut Marko isn't impressed with that one. But ultimately, it's not up to him. It's such a Red Bull. But obviously, he's had no points, I think, since Spain it goes back to. But he feels quite relaxed about it. It doesn't feel like there's a lot of pressure on his performance. He had that good run. But it's also allowed Liam Lawson to come back in. He was talking about being a rookie and mistakes are normal and he's still learning. It was quite nice to see that, refreshing the honest opinion from him. It seems rookies have got that honest opinion about him and are not afraid to talk about it in the media when you go back to, obviously, Ollie Bearman as well and Gabriel Bortoletto. So it's quite nice to see that coming across in the press. Sometimes it feels like they're a bit too polished in their media answers. So at least at the moment, when we've got so many rookies on the grid, the media can't control them as much. I'm sure in a few years' time, they'll be giving us all of those political answers that we all hate. Yeah, in terms of Isaac Hadjar, there certainly seems to be no sort of talk about any sort of performance issues with him in terms of not getting a seat. We know that Yuki Tsunoda is probably going to make way. We did the podcast last week on 2026 predictions. We know it's most likely going to be Yuki. It seems to be a very 50-50 coin toss between Liam Lawson and Isaac Hadjar at the moment over which one partners Max Verstappen. I'm not too sure which one wants it the most, if I'm honest. Liam probably feels he got a point to prove after, of course, being booted out after 2 races. Isaac has talked about not particularly wanting it. I think he quite likes the idea of another season in racing bulls, being the top dog there, so to speak, building up. Yeah, I think for me, it's going to be really sort of interesting to see which one Red Bull go through. Liam, like I say, seems to have that confidence brewing at the moment, has done it very much under the radar, but his performances have just been getting better and better and better. Obviously, this is the scene of where Liam Lawson made his debut for Daniel Ricciardo a few years ago after that accident with, I think it was Oscar Piastri in the wall, wasn't it, in the practice session. So, good memories for him here. Performance-wise, I think he's doing well. I think if Liam starts the second half as he ended the first half, beating Isaac, then Isaac might just be looking over his shoulder a bit more. But I don't think that Red Bull have got the depth in the pool to actually put him under pressure at the moment. And I think there's a general consensus that he's still learning, like he said himself. So I think that Red Bull are quite happy that there are some mistakes happening with the way the two teams are placed, and they'd probably rather get them out of the way, so to speak. So, that's pretty much it from me today. We had a bit of talk about, obviously, George Russell and his contract, talk about how he wants to win a championship with Mercedes, but it needs to be the right deal. George, you're not kidding anybody. We know you're going to sign for Mercedes. It's a case of when, not if. We know that Mercedes holds your contract. We know that you're going to be announced probably at the same time with Kimi on a short-term deal so that Mercedes get their options open for Max. And I kind of want it done now to put it to bed once and for all, because these media soundbites aren't fooling anybody. Ultimately, that's going to be where Mercedes go. Like I said, I think Monza makes perfect sense, certainly for the Kimi announcement. It makes sense to sign them both. I don't see Mercedes, from a marketing and a sort of team point of view, announcing their rookie before George. I mean, we've got a Valtteri Bottas contract before George Russell renewal, which is quite baffling, really, isn't it? But there you go. Lewis Hamilton talked about how he's used the summer break for a reset. Second half of the year, he's looking forward to just moving that Ferrari performance on, ready for next season. So probably very similar to Max, apart from with Lewis, it feels like he needs to regain that confidence and that trust from it. The rest of the drivers, there wasn't really a lot to talk about, if I'm honest. Yeah, that's pretty much your media day Zandvoort roundup of of what happened. There is a more in-depth article on the website, which is www.coffeecornermotorsport.com. If you want to head on over there, it's obviously got daily Formula One news. It's got race previews. I launched a new preview on there this morning, which was a bit like a strategy guide, which talked about all of the tyres, the changes in the pit stop. So in Zandvoort this weekend, for example, we've gone up to 80 kilometers an hour instead of 60. It's normally 80 at most tracks. There's only 4 tracks on the Formula One calendar before this season where it wasn't. Monaco was one because of the size. Singapore was another one. Zandvoort was another one, and I can't remember the fourth one. But Singapore is looking to go up to 80, and of course Zandvoort has now been moved up to 80. It takes about 3 to 4 seconds off a pit stop. Pit stop is probably going to cost you about 20 seconds. In terms of tyres, we've gone a compound softer. So what you've got now is you've got quicker pit stops, softer compound. We know last year they had problems with the soft. It only lasted about 27 laps. So I think the idea is it's trying to promote a 2-stop. However, with that weather forecast of rain in every single session, that could all go out the window, couldn't it? But it's another case of Pirelli and the FIA trying to, I suppose, artificially encourage more racing. We all know how that normally goes, to go back to the Monaco 2-stops. But yeah, if anything, it should put a 2-stop back into contention now rather than a 1-stop. I mean, last year you had the hard tyre, it just went on forever, but it had no pace to it. So the medium was the one. But with a set softer compound, you kind of feel that it's going to be a little bit different on that one. But yeah, that's pretty much it. You know, Zandvoort, like I say, the weather forecast has got rain all weekend in terms of every session. So it'd be interesting to see how that one goes. And that is your media day roundup, which brings us nicely on to Cadillac and Keanu Reeves and his announcement. So Cadillac surprised absolutely nobody by announcing Valtteri Bottas and Sergio Perez for 2026. No surprises, but significant in what they did. Now, there's been a lot of talk in the media pen. You know, Verstappen text Checo to say congratulations. Mercedes has been quick to congratulate Valtteri Bottas, etc., etc. A lot of talk about why they didn't go for a US driver. I got told off on my post for saying American because Mexico is technically part of America, even though I think Mexicans would call themselves Mexicans, not Americans. But hey, point taken. And there's no US driver. Let's get it right to make sure I don't get lynched in the comments. And for me, it's one of those where they needed experience rather than a rookie. A rookie gives you too many unknowns. Now, I know a lot of people were clamoring for Felipe Drugovich, you know, Jack Crawford getting promoted there. Could they do a deal with Colton Herta to get more super license points, for example? But for me, it makes perfect sense to why they've done it. They need a safe, credible choice to give them experience, to give them feedback, to develop the car, and to be able to capitalise and get points if the opportunity arises. Like I say, it's really bitter for a young driver. But even the rookies, yeah, I think they asked Ollie Bearman, I think it was, and Gabriel Bortoletto about this, and both of them said that basically, as much as it stings that they didn't go for a rookie in terms of rookies coming through and people they know coming through, they can totally understand why Cadillac did it. Now, it's not the most glamorous signing. We know that Checo brings with him a massive sponsorship deal in terms of that Carlos Slim money. We know that Valtteri brings with him that social media side that makes him instantly marketable. We saw them doing the rounds on Good Morning America. We saw the social media pick up from the pair of them. Obviously, it's Valtteri's birthday today as well. Valtteri, actually, if you've seen that announcement he did on the surfboard, it's actually genuinely true. It's not AI. Everyone thought it was AI, but Valtteri did don a suit, got on a surfboard, messed it up a few times, I must say. But if you go over to his social media, it's actually on there. The video behind the scenes talks about how this is like the best number 2 driver is becoming a team pairing in Formula One history. Obviously, massive experience over 500 Grand Prix between the pair of them as well. Multiple race wins, multiple podiums. So it makes sense on paper to why Cadillac have gone down this route. Like I say, the marketability of Checo in the US is obviously huge as well. It seems like there's a really big appetite for Cadillac. If you look at their social media upturn from when they made that announcement, it went from almost nothing to just exploding. We've seen that obviously Tommy Hilfiger getting on board as well now with their posts, and it's a start of it. Now, in terms of the drivers, I did a video on this one, so I'm not going to do too much into it. But Valtteri Bottas is going to remain a Mercedes driver for the rest of 2025. Mercedes have confirmed that. Sergio Perez is technically free to join Cadillac at any time. So what you might see is a lot more Cadillac Checo stuff just because Valtteri is a Mercedes reserve driver. A huge shout out has to go to Toto Wolff for once again getting another Mercedes reserve driver back on the Formula One grid. I mean, if you're Yuki Tsunoda, pick up the phone to Toto, because if you can get him with him, that Mercedes pull is massive, isn't it? He almost managed to get Mick back as well. So fair play to him in terms of getting drivers back on the grid. He certainly knows how to do it, doesn't he? But like I say, it's not glamorous. It's the right call. They're going to bring knowledge of good cars, bad cars. They've both been at the top end. They've both been in the middle of the pack as well. Valtteri's got a point to prove. His qualifying pace was strong last year against Joe, but obviously 0 points for them. We know all about Checo and Red Bull. He talks about the sort of struggles that the Red Bull drivers have had since he's left. So he's pointed to Yuki, pointed to Liam Lawson and said, well, actually, none of those have done much better, have they, since they got rid of me? So he's parking it firmly as that second Red Bull seat is completely undrivable, completely in a way that actually that's going to sort of justify them getting rid of him. So yeah, it was quite interesting to see. I like the announcement. It had obviously Keanu Reeves doing the voiceover in the meeting at the end. Probably could have done with a shave, if I'm honest, but it's John Wick. What can you expect? But for me, it's the start of this journey that we're going to see with Cadillac. It's the start of them really cementing themselves in Formula One. They are bound by the cost cap and the wind tunnel runs. They're doing what they're calling these satellite sort of hybrid things, where they talk about they're doing like mock race weekends. I think they're starting one with Monza, where basically they're simulating a race weekend. So they obviously can't be at a race weekend because they're not allowed to be, because they're not a Formula One team officially as such, but they are mocking the whole weekend. So they're doing the whole prep in the factory. So getting the car ready, getting it ready to transport, setting up their mission control, running it on the same timelines as what you would do for a Grand Prix. Actually on about putting some cars at the track at Silverstone to sort of replicate being at a track and then beaming all that stuff back to the factory to make sure all the stuff works. It makes sense. I think that Graham Loden's done quite an article on how he's using NASA as like a blueprint on what they're doing. We know they're going to do testing in previous cars. It looks like they got a deal with Ferrari. They didn't officially confirm who it's with. What they said is they've got a deal to test previous cars. It's most likely going to be Ferrari because of the deal, so they can fall under the same testing in previous cars. They're now bound by the same rules. I know a couple of people asked this question on what happens with them. So the minute the FIA and Formula One, said yes to them coming into Formula One, they were bound by the Concord Agreement, which means the cost cap come into play. It also meant the wind tunnel runs come into play. So their class is the 11th. So I think it's 115% of the wind tunnel runs, something like that. Don't quote me on that figure, but the bottom basically. So they get the most wind tunnel time as well. They're not buying a lot of parts. So then they're not doing a Haas deal where they're coming in and buying a load of parts. They don't seem to have a technical partnership with anyone for that. It is just like the engine and gearbox they're getting from Ferrari. It seems they're not a customer in terms of like Haas, so it's going to be really interesting to see what they do. They're recruiting massively. I think I said on my live the other day, if you're looking for a job in Formula One and you're in the Silverstone area, check out the Cadillac website because there is boatloads going on to there. So yeah, I think Cadillac are now here, aren't they? This feels like a real big turning point. Driver announcements. It feels like we're going to start to be seeing a lot more Cadillac in social media. It feels like someone's finally got the login for social media and they're now doing posts. And it feels we're going to be seeing them at races here a lot more, especially now that driver announcement is done, which is really exciting. I'm looking forward to 11 teams, 22 cars. It can only be good for the sport. Yes, there's a hinge disappointment. Those seats haven't gone to rookies. But from a Cadillac point of view, absolutely, totally get it. So yeah, that is your 30-minute Formula 1 Espresso news. Media day done. Max Verstappen's calm. Lando Norris is chasing Oscar Piastri down in the championship. The rookies are split. Cadillac are making headlines. In terms of me and content, you'll obviously be seeing FP1, FP2. I'm going to start something new where I'm going to be doing like a reaction video straight after the qualifying session. So one thing I've realised since doing all of this is I get a shed load of information, to excuse the pun, being in the shed. And I'm trying to find the best way to bring it out there because everything's different. Some people like articles, some people don't like clicking to go to the website. The website gives me credibility in terms of trying to build up that media standing. So for me personally, it's a real important part of Coffee Corner Motorsport in terms of seeing how we're perceived as being different from just being someone who does TikToks, if I'm honest, and being a bit more professional in what we do. So I want to keep that one going. So for me, there's going to be a reaction video that comes out straight after the sessions, which will give you a quick roundup of what's happened. There'll be followed by an article later on the website with some links if you want to go over and read a much more in-depth version of that one. So once everything's died down, we've got all of the series documents through, a full race-blown sort of debrief from all of the sessions. First one's coming out later today, which will be a roundup in media day. So that's pretty good. Doing some work on Patreon at the moment. So I know that Patreon has got the tiers where you can obviously subscribe and support the shed. I don't want to be seen as selling the podcast. We covered that last week. So the tiers are basically at the moment, that gets you this podcast a day early with no adverts on it, so that you can get it on the Thursday. For everyone else, it comes out on the Friday. Quick like, follow, subscribe, hint, nudge, wink, wink in there. So that's what I'm doing on that one. And then also, if you go to the top tier on the Patreon one, or the middle tier, I can't remember which one I'll put on now, but I'm going to open it to a bit of a Q&A on there as well. So I'm going to basically give you a 10-minute, 20-minute Q&A answer session each week on questions that you want personally answered. So if you ever want a bit of in-depth knowledge into something and you're a Patreon member, sign up and you can drop it in there and I'll do it on there. In terms of where you can find me, I will, of course, be on Fantasy Formula with Fanam, hour before qualifying, which is on Saturday. And, of course, I will be on TikTok Tuesday Night Live as normal. So that's where you can just drop in and we can talk Formula One. So, yeah, really appreciate the support this week as well. I put a post up earlier on how my dreams got quashed once again. It wasn't a post to say that I was giving up, far from it. I genuinely feel that there's a place for Coffee Corner Motorsport in what media does. I really want to break the doors down and show what we can do, show that there's a fan-first, factual, way of doing things without the clicks, the baits, the drama, all of that side of things. And for me, it was really great to see that support coming on board. It was really great to read the comments. Sorry if I gave you the impression I was going anywhere, because I'm not, genuinely not. It was just me reacting to a disappointment. One of the things I want to start sharing is more behind the scenes of what I do, so more about how we do all this and what it takes to do these things and what it takes to build this up from the shed, because ultimately I'm really proud of what we've done and I want to share that journey with all of you who've been supporting it, because ultimately, as much as I enjoy this journey, and like I've always said, as long as I'm enjoying creating content, I'll keep doing it, which, by the way, I am. But ultimately, if no one listens, no one shares, no one likes, no one hits that subscribe button, then it ain't worth doing it, is it? So a massive thank you to me for all of you who've kind of shared the love on there. And yeah, really appreciate you all. It meant a lot this week reading all those comments. It gave me a real good pickup when I needed it. So massive thank you for me. So yeah, that is it from me. Like I said, if you haven't already, don't forget to hit that follow, like, subscribe button. And that is everything from Formula 1 Espresso News. I will catch you next week with all of the latest from the paddock to the podcast